Welcome to our Get Informed session, Impact of Working Remotely on Mental Health. My name is Anna Christie. I'm the Chief Executive for the Sussex Chamber. Working remotely is having an impact on all of us, whether as individuals, families, young people. I have an 18-year-old and he can't go to college, so it's impacting all of our families. Today's session will look at how you can get the best support for your teams from a distance. We are joined today by Anna Golawski, founder of Stratus Coaching, who specialises in mental toughness. Please, can I welcome Anna? I'm going to hand over to Anna and then just let me know when you're ready to share the screen and I can do that for you, Anna.
Lovely. Thanks very much, other Anna. Welcome to today's session. So this one today is going to be a webinar. Obviously, it's going to take us up until 3 o'clock at the latest. And the way that we've sort of designed it for today is that the first bit will be going through some slides with a bit of background information, looking at mental health, how we can support our teams, and then there's going to be a fair amount dedicated to question and answers for people. So if you've got any sort of questions that you want to ask, please feel free to do so. So it's going to be looking at sort of mental health, but with a particular angle of thinking, how can we support the mental health of our teams, particularly sort of people who are working remotely, who might not be used to working remotely, and what can we do for them? And I like to sort of think of this as a boxing quote that's sort of that's been going around, and it's been attributed to various boxers throughout the year, depending on their career. But it's that everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And I think this whole sort of coronavirus has been an almighty left hook from someone like Mike Tyson. It's blown loads of people, of course. I mean, a couple of months ago I was working overseas, and then all of a sudden sort of, back here, and travel plans, work and everything has just sort of, been totally changed, wiped out, etc. So we're going to have a look at why our mental health has been impacted so much as well. So what we're going to have a look at today is, why is our mental health being affected? Why is it affecting our productivity levels? If we can just go down to the second slide, please, Anna. Have a think about what are some of the signs that we might see in our people. What are some of the things that we can look out for when we're sort of dealing with people? Because obviously we're not sort of seeing them on a regular basis in an office. And also have a look at a few sort of top tips. And it really is sort of key to sort of take away what's useful to you and what's applicable to your situation. Because in this in these circumstances, we're all being affected in different ways, depending on our employment status, depending whether we're working, depending whether we're self-employed. So some things are going to be more relevant to people than others, and that's absolutely fine. And I think also thinking about well-being, one of the things is to think about it in a proactive way. So quite often people talk about mental health and well-being as if it's an afterthought when the day job is done. My sort of principle is that we should sort of proactively be thinking about our well-being. This isn't something that we do when all the the rest of the day's work is done, and then we sort of think about how we're going to look after ourselves in the evening. But it's really about thinking, what can we do proactively? And I think one of my favourite phrases when it comes to this is that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So I think anything that we can do to look after ourselves proactively, look after our teams proactively, is going to pay dividends, not just sort of financially in terms of productivity, but just in terms of engagement, support, and well-being, productivity, and everything else. So I can now see the slides again, Anna. Brilliant, great. So yeah, we're on. If we can just go back one slightly, we've now got a tiny bit ahead. Yep, that's perfect. So we're looking at the mental health spectrum, and sort of carrying on with the topic of sort of mental health and what it means. We tend to find that people only think about mental health as a thing to do at the end of the day, but we also only sort of think about mental health when we're unwell. A lot of people don't really think about mental health as being something that we've all got, and a lot of the times, we're quite healthy with our mental health. And I like this sort of spectrum because it's very similar to our physical health in terms of the parity. We all have, certain levels of physical health. Some of us are, very fit, very healthy, and eat, really, really well. Other people not quite so much. And it's the same with our mental health, so some days we can be sort of, feeling absolutely great. Then other sort of, days or, certain times we might not be coping as well, for whatever reasons. And if that left's being unaddressed, and that can become where we sort of, start to struggle and eventually become sort of, very unwell and possibly be sort of, signed off work. And mental health is really important because it's all about how we cope with the ups and downs of life. It determines how we feel about ourselves, how we deal with negative events and stresses. So do we have the capability and the resilience to bounce back, or do things really affect us a lot more than we perhaps would like them to? It also helps in terms of our self-esteem and self-confidence. Do we feel sort of, able and up for the challenges? And also how we sort of, think, feel and behave in general. So it really is important to sort of, think about it sort of, holistically in a way, as opposed to sort of like an add-on at the end of the day. And although the situation itself might not change, by proactively thinking about our mental health and well-being, it just means that we're sort of, better equipped to deal with the situation. It's much easier to deal with stuff when you're sort of feeling mentally alert, refreshed, had a good night's sleep, than when you're feeling absolutely worn out, drained and sluggish. So if we have a look on the next screen, there's a psychologist that I really like, and this is a gentleman called Daniel Kahneman, and he's got a book out called Thinking Fast and Slow, and he explains our minds as having two systems. So we all have system one, which is our very sort of fast thinking brain. This is where it's very quick, it's instinctive, it's that emotional, instant reaction kind of like response. If someone asks you a question, we automatically know the answer. We don't need to put much effort into thinking about something. If someone asks your name, your address, where do you live, what do you do? We don't need to think about it, too much. It's there, it's at the top of our brains with a quick answer. We then have another part of our mind system, which is called system 2, and this is the slow thinking part of our brains. And this is what we need when we've got more complex decisions to handle. This is a lot more of our sort of conscious thoughts. It takes a lot more effort. It's probably about 10 times more mental energies to use our slow thinking brain that is for our fast thinking brain. Much more deliberate, logical. So our brains and our minds, we tend to try and use our system 1 fast thinking wherever possible. Our brains are trying to, look after us, conserve our mental energies, make life easy for us. Whereas mental system 2 takes a lot more effort and a lot more energy. So we only really try to use that one for the more complex things. But as we'll see on the next slide, this leads to what we call cognitive ease. So our system 1 brain is looking for all the things in the environment that feel familiar to us. We constantly want things which are comfortable, they feel true. We don't need to have sort of, so much effort. It helps us be in a better mood. And we like this, we like that sort of, certain level of certainty and predictability. We know what's what, we know what's going to happen. We know what's familiar. But what happens in situations like this, where we get this sort of, the metaphorical sort of, punch in the face with the coronavirus, is that our brain starts scanning the environment for the threats. We're looking for things that aren't familiar, we're not used to them, it's not their normal sort of, patterns, routines, and stuff like that. And this means that our brains go into that alert sort of, vigilant state. It's sort of, they go into this sort of like the cognitive strain. And this has a massive impact on our mood. So when our sort of, our brains are feeling comfortable and at ease, we tend to be in a relatively good mood. Things are okay. We're comfortable. It's predictable. We know what's what. We know what's happening. But in times like this, our brains are constantly on the alert, looking for sort of, things that are happening, what's coming around the corner, how long is this situation going to last for? And that can have a massive impact on our moods, and also our energy levels. A lot of people are saying how tired they are at the moment. And that's because our brains are just sort of, constantly trying to recreate these normal patterns of behaviour and the familiarity and the comfort zone that we like to work in. So what are some of the things, do you think, and again, if we can use the chat section for this. So what are some of the things that you notice that are sort of affecting the cognitive ease? What are some of these, the stress situations can you think of, either for yourselves or your team? What are some of the common things that people are talking about that's worrying them, that's bothering them at these times? And if we can see the chat function. So if you have it all on there. So most things are short term. Yeah, I think there is that kind of, the short term, we like the comfort of things being sort of, predictable and longer lasting. Social distancing, absolutely, yeah, just not having sort of, people around us that we're used to. And I saw someone at the weekend from a distance, and it felt really weird not being able to go close and give them a hug. Change of environment, their job, our jobs, they're changing fundamentally, and overnight. Even if we're still in a job, the routine, the daily stuff that we just automatically do without consciously thinking about it is totally changed. Job security, yeah, absolutely. That's going to be a sort of, a massive factor for people. Noise and distractions, yeah, we're working in different environments. We get used to the office noise and the banter and the chat, and we can zone out of it. And when we've got sort of, children, as lovely as they are, it's a distraction. We're sort of, we're consciously having our minds directed to them. Work can meet many other human needs, which isn't there right now. Yeah, that's absolutely true. I think work can get a bit of a bad press when it comes to stress, but actually there's so much research that says that work is really good for us. The routine, the being in a group, having a purpose, having clear sort of, direction, is absolutely valuable to people. Missing team members, yeah, the daily interaction, just like the social catch up and the talking about EastEnders or whatever it is the night before. Things like status, control, challenge, yeah, absolutely, yeah. We're sort of, we like to sort of develop our brains. We like to sort of problem solve. It gives us a sense of purpose, motivation, and engagement, and that sense of connection that that's so vital. That really is. So thank you so much for those contributions. If we move on to the next slide, this shows us, oh, hang on, I've just got a great one in there. What's this one? So uncertainty, business planning, cash flow and employment. Yep, all of these things. Socially, it's human interactions and what happens when the lockdown eases. That's a really interesting point, actually. A lot of people are saying, what is going to be normal after this? Things probably aren't going to be as they were before. A lot of organisations where they haven't had any remote working are, seeing that it can actually work. Reaching out to people, trying to be positive, checking in on them. Yeah, all of this is absolutely fantastic stuff. Thank you so much for all of these. We are all absolutely different as human beings. We're all totally unique when it comes to stress. So some of the things that we've just gone through are going to be more prevalent to some people than to others. But stress tends to fall into one of three factors. So the first factor is protecting things that are important to us. So loved ones, family, house, mortgage and stuff like that. So this is why there is a lot of stress around at the moment, because obviously people are very concerned that their loved ones or family members might get ill. There's the concern about job security and being able to pay the mortgage, pay the bills, pay the rent. How long is this? We're going to be able to be sort of furloughed, or if you're a self-employed person, go without having the regular income coming in. So massive source of stress, and again, it's going to be slightly different for different people. Social evaluation is one, so being judged or criticised by other people. I must admit, at the beginning of the call, when we weren't quite sure if the slides were going to work, I could sort of feel my stress and anxiety slightly rising, because you're thinking, am I going to look an absolute twit on a webinar without any slides to go with it? And what are people going to make of that? And then there's also the third one, the lack of control. So if the situation feels out of our control, or that success and achievement of something is beyond our power, beyond our control, that can be a huge source of stress for people. So at the moment, the lack of control, the lack of certainty can be very stressful for people, because we just, we're not entirely sure how long this lockdown is going to go on for. When are we going to sort of get back to schools, back to work? How's it going to happen, etc. And these things, if we have a look on the next page, they all kind of go into what we call our stress bucket or our stress container. And this is just one way of sort of thinking, how are we dealing with things at the moment? And this is a very sort of a popular way of thinking about stress and resilience, because we all deal with stuff on a daily basis, whether it's a commute, whether it's getting children ready, whether it's kind of like work, deadlines, commitments, projects. And all of this stuff is going into our stress bucket and our stress container on a daily basis. And, for the vast majority of us, most of the time we can actually deal with this stuff. And we also have some very good coping mechanisms, that can help us deal with this. So some of the stuff can be really good, positive, healthy things that we can do to relieve stress. Some of it is probably not so good, the chocolate, the cakes, the drinking, the smoking, those kind of things. But what happens is when our stress bucket overflows, if we're not actually sort of looking after ourselves, or our teams, we begin to overflow. So our stress bucket gets absolutely sort of full to the top. And that's when we snap and we get irritable, and we call it the emotional snapping. And it's why you might find that you ask someone to do something or input into a project or something, and they absolutely bite your head off, and you think, God, that was really out of character or over the top in terms of the response for the situation. It's possibly because their stress bucket is absolutely full to the brim, and that was the last thing that just pushed them over the edge. So it's never, the situation, per se, it tends to be the cumulative effect of everything else which is going on. And again, this is where sort of looking after our mental health and well-being can be so important, because it allows us to implement this sort of good coping strategies. So what are, if we can go back to the chat, what are some of the the things that you're noticing that are helping at the moment? So when we sort of think about stress and anxiety, what are some of the things that you're doing, your teams are doing, that's helped them sort of get through these times? And if you want to sort of put any comments, ideas in the chat box, that'd be great. So what is it that you're doing that's helping, that's good for you? Exercise, yeah, different perspectives, keeping in touch with people, yeah. Video conferencing. Yeah, regular call. Yeah, that sort of sense of connection is so important, isn't it? Yeah. And actually, I like that one, Zoom meetings that aren't necessarily work related, daily updates on successes, exercise, reframing, looking at the benefits. I must admit, I have, until the rain today, I have enjoyed taking my dog for a walk on the beach in the mornings rather than being on the Gatwick Express up to London. Doing different things, jigsaw puzzles, sense of humour. I think a good old British sense of humour is vital. Work pub quiz, I like that. Virtual coffee mornings, Friday quizzes, an early finish to allow to do this. Reading, dancing, writing, all of these wonderful things. Meditation, talking to people via Zoom and traditional phone. Online pub quizzes. I haven't actually done one yet, but I have heard that they're really good. Knowing that it will pass eventually, yes. It's that really reminds me of Martin Seligman, who does a lot around resilience, and one of the things that can help us is knowing that things aren't permanent. Things will pass, things will change, get back to the way things were a little bit. Watching TV is now old-fashioned. I like that. A recognition shout out call at the end of the week with the team. That's sort of the feedback and sort of Zoom society. These are all absolutely fantastic things that are just so important for us to just remind ourselves on, sort of keeping the communication going and sort of being positive. And and I really like that. That's so true actually. Being honest. It's sort of not pretending that everything is fine. If people are struggling, it's important that people can be honest and admit to needing a bit more help or support, because we're all different. With all of these things, it's knowing what works for you. We know what's good for us, but actually it's knowing and recognising what works for you is the key thing to sort of to doing this. So if we move on to the next page, which is looking at how can we tell that people aren't coping as well as we'd like them to be. So there's sort of various signs we've get my teeth in, look out for. They are going to change from person to person. This isn't a sort of a prescriptive list, but these are just some of the things to look out for if someone is starting not to sort of cope and not be sort of on the the positive end of the mental health spectrum so much. So they might talk about their worries a lot more, sort of people who are normally quite sort of positive might become pessimistic even. Increased worries, and particularly about sort of smaller things that perhaps are normally insignificant that they wouldn't normally be worried about. Headaches, unexplained aches, pains, symptoms and stuff like that. Being quite negative, we can tend to sort of pick up in that in terms of their body language, if it's something on a Zoom call, or the words that they're using. Loss of confidence, particularly in the workplace. If you're asking them to do something, they might sort of be a bit more hesitant than normally. Apathy, they might just be absolutely exhausted and tired and just lacking in motivation. Sometimes the quality of the work can go down. There's more mistakes, they're missing deadlines, they're sort of, they're not working to their normal sort of, standards. Some people are noticing that people aren't participating quite so much on Zoom calls, webinars, team calls, etc., or perhaps avoiding them. So at the beginning, I think, everyone's very enthusiastic, and then perhaps there is a little bit of Zoom fatigue going on. But it's also sort of, noticing where people who are normally sort of quite engaged in team conversations and contributing and asking questions, if they start sort of holding back and not participating, to sort of perhaps pick up on a conversation with them. Tone of voice, and again, these are some of the things that we can sort of notice even if we're not in the office with them. A bit flat, monotone, sighing quite a bit, just that general kind of heaviness about them. And also thinking about the language, what kind of words are they using, what kind of sentences, how are they talking, is this their kind of nonormal way of being? Or in a change in appearance, and I know not, we don't expect people to wear a suit, for a webinar and stuff like that, but if someone is looking a bit shall I say unkempt, maybe, where normally they'd sort of take pride in their appearance, these are sort of some of the things that we can sort of pick up on sort of sooner rather than later. And I think the key is to notice is the kind of the changes in someone. So you might have someone who doesn't always talk up on a call or a webinar or a Zoom chat or something like that, but as if someone is sort of changing their support, changing their input, changing their behaviour. That is the key thing. Or it might be that someone's normally quite scruffy, they've got into the the attitude that actually if they're working from home they wear what they want, and if they want to do all their work in their pyjamas, that's absolutely fine. But if you notice that someone who's normally sort of quite smart, presentable and stuff like that, suddenly starts looking as if they're just sort of not bothered so much, then that's worth kind of having a chat with them, seeing if everything's okay, what can you do, how can you help them. So looking on the next page then, so some of the top tips for dealing with our teams. And I think one of the underlying principles to start off with is that in these times we are staying at home to stay safe and trying to work. I think the work almost has to be sort of very sort of slightly secondary to the staying safe and staying at home. People's physical and mental health are a top priority at this time. It's not an afterthought. It's not something that we think about when a day job is done. This is imperative to everyone's well-being and be able to sort of bounce back and sort of keep going. Productivity levels will be affected, particularly for the short to medium term, because we're getting used to this new way of working. We're figuring things out. We're using different parts of our brain much more consciously and deliberately than we ever have done before. Everyone's situation is different, depending on our employment status, responsibilities, healthcare, children, being at home, the age of the children, stuff like that. So one of the things that really doesn't help people, and I know this, we're probably aware of this, but it's just a helpful reminder, is not comparing to people, not saying to people, oh, well, you're so lucky you've got a garden. It's like, well, yeah, but it doesn't mean that the rest of the stuff isn't stressful. It's kind of, I still don't know whether, the next piece of paid work is coming from. Yes, I can sit and have a gin and tonic in the garden in the evening. Not always that helpful. Avoiding assumptions, so getting to know your team in a new light. And what I mean by this is they might be sort of, quite different when they're working from home as they are in the office, when they've got their sort of, children, partners, etc. So regularly reviewing how they're going, their sort of, their duties, responsibilities, workload, and how they're coping. And, I think it's very easy, and a lot of people have been saying actually that they just assume that the people who are the most outgoing, sort of, confident, loudest ones in the office are going to be absolutely fine. And it's not always true, actually. And we tend to be finding that the more introvert people are enjoying working at home a lot more because they're not surrounded by people. And actually, the more extrovert someone is, the harder they're finding it because they haven't got people around them. They haven't got their sort of, the buzz and the social connections from people that they'd normally have. Lead by example. So, really sort of, demonstrate to your team that it's okay to have boundaries, to take care of their well-being, and try and stick where possible to working hours. And I know this might vary depending on the situation in childcare. Some people say, well, actually, it's better for me if I'm sort of with the children in the afternoon and then pick up and work in the evening. But just making sure that we haven't got people working incredibly long hours and just trying to work longer and longer rather than working smarter. And one of the examples that I always like to think of when it comes to this was an author that I was talking to, and she noticed that she was really, really good at working for 4 hours in the morning. That was her best time for creativity and writing and sort of getting her book done, until she was up against a deadline. She had a publisher's deadline that she had to meet, and that's when she'd try and work for the whole day. She'd spend the afternoon writing as well. But she soon started to notice that when she sat down the following day to sort of to edit what she'd done the day before, it was so rubbish that she either had to totally scrap it or really heavily edit it. So actually, she really realised that actually working longer doesn't mean that you're being more effective or more productive, and we only have so much mental energies, in the same way that sports people sort of, value their rest days so they can recuperate and recharge and sort of, renew their sort of, physical energies. We kind of need to think about our mental energies like that. We only have so much mental energy. We have to have breaks. We have to switch off. We have to let our brains, bounce back again, really, and sort of do something else. Make time, number 6, to make time for the social conversations, virtual huddles, afternoon, Fridays, sort of, pub meetups, coffees, and also just in terms of any sort of, work-related call, just sort of, checking in with people. Again, it's that sort of, proactivity, checking in sooner rather than later with people. Read between the lines. Again, we're not sort of, we're not able to pick up on body language quite so much. So it's really picking up on, people's tone of voice, the things that they're saying, struggles that they might be sort of, talking about, the stuff that we've just been going through on the previous page. And again, the sooner we can have sort of, a conversation, the better. And praise and feedback is one of these things. There's a ratio that we should all aim for generally, not just sort of, during coronavirus times, of 5 to 1, sort of positive to negative. So for each piece of sort of, negative or constructive feedback that we give to people, and this is our children as well, it's very effective for children building their resilience. We should try and give people sort of, 5 pieces of positive feedback, praise, recognition as well. It can really make a massive difference, particularly at the moment if people are feeling anxious and vulnerable. The confidence levels will go down, so actually being supportive and more than we would do normally can be incredibly helpful. Remind them of internal existing support. Again, if people are feeling really stressed, they can't always see the wood for the trees. So just reminding them, if you've got occupational health, if you've got employee assistance programs, if you've got mental health first aiders, encourage them to sort of pick up the phone and talk to someone. And just try and trust that they will get onto the jobs as best as they can. Set the clear expectations, let them get on to it, the best of their sort of, current abilities, provide the guidance and the support where needed. So these are the top tips. I'm happy to sort of, share these as a PDF afterwards if people would like them, obviously in addition to the recording. And then on the last page, there's a couple of support places there. There's tons of stuff on the web at the moment. These are the couple that I particularly like. So the Mind, which is a mental health charity, has got loads of top tips, resources, support. Headspace is a great app. A lot of people like that in terms of guided meditation. There's sort of 10 minutes. There's lots of free stuff on there that you can use. And then there's also the Mental Health at Work. So this is the charity set up by Prince William and Kate, which has got a lot of, again, great resources, support, top tips for for people who might need it, might be struggling to go to, but there might also be loads of other stuff out there as well. This is just, a few of the things which are out there. And then finally, if anyone wants any top tips from me, on the sort of the last page, there's my contact details. So if you do want sort of a couple of top tips sheets that sort of summarises what we've gone through, then probably best drop me an email or text message or something. So that's the slides bit done, the sort of the presentation. So the rest of the time that we've got now is opening up to questions, answers, comments, also anything that you want to share with us. What's going well for you that we can share by sort of other people's experiences and examples. So happy for you to either wave your hands, unmute yourself, put something in the chat box, whatever would help.
I think it's important as well, Anna, just to let people know that even the staff that have been furloughed, they can actually carry out training. It's important that we keep in touch with staff that have been furloughed at this moment in time, keep in touch with them, but then maybe ensure that they're still being kept active through training courses, because they can still do training. So that's a way of keeping them mentally active as well. So I think that's important to note for some of those that have had to furlough staff. Yeah, and I think there's lots of online sort of free stuff as well, whether it's kind of more work related or music, yoga, creative stuff online as well. Just sort of keeping active. So we've got a couple of things in the chat. So Headspace app is excellent. Also been doing the NHS responder and phoning the elderly who are alone. It really does help, that connection, and also for our own well-being, sort of supporting being able to care for other people and sort of do charity work is good for our own well-being. Keeping the team up to date to see how the crisis is playing out. So 3 months of coping and adapting to sudden change and new ways of doing things. 6 months of recovery. 9 months of slowly starting to put this business back on. 18 months plus markets will take off again. So I think having that sort of that long-term time frames, people, keeping people up to date, informed. What is the hope, the expectation going forwards? I think as well as with that, we are adapting to a completely new environment, and we do miss that interaction, that office banter, those distractions, that human interaction. But equally, if we put ourselves back into the very first time we started work and going into an office environment, for those that did go into an office environment rather than setting up their own business, it was very daunting. And after a few days, you felt very tired and exhausted, and you were, putting in extra effort, which is exactly the same as now adapting to working from home. We're all very tired and adapting to a new way of working. So it's putting it, I'm just thinking of my son when he's going to start working. He's going to come up with exactly the same things that people are coming up with now, from being Zoom exhaustion to office exhaustion. Because I don't think we quite realise how much of the stuff that we do on automatic pilot. It's habits, it's routines. We don't really think about the train, the bus, the journey to work so much. Whereas now we're having to sort of consciously, rethink things and create new habits and routines and stuff like that. That's helpful for us. Some of the other things, people have asked for my email address. I've put it in the chat. So if anyone does want to sort of get in touch for top tips or anything, that's absolutely fine. Sending out staff newsletters, little staff newsletters. I think because a lot of people are saying that they're very overwhelmed at the minute. Bite-sized chunks, so little and often, which is manageable and digestible for people, really helps them. Funny, light-hearted items and pieces. I think just keeping that kind of, the banter, that light-hearted stuff as well, is important. Teams are learning more and more skills, IT, etc. So actually, we are going to be, probably more equipped managing change in the future. If ever we had a sort of a virus like this again, we would definitely know what to do sooner rather than later. We are learning so much, and again, it's exhausting. Anyone who's done sort of learning, studying, and stuff like that. So Zoom fatigue, and I think it is being able to manage boundaries, isn't it? It's being able to say no, manage your diaries a little bit, manage your own expectations as well. It's so important. Does anyone else have any more questions or anything at all for Anna? Anybody? If so, please do unmute yourself. No? I think it's also, it's going back to what we were saying, Anna, it is making sure that we are keeping in touch with, but we're trying to do light-hearted things as well to make sure people aren't fatigued and tired, and they are sticking to their office hours, what they would normally work. Because the first few weeks, I was literally working 12, 14-hour days. It was just so easy to do that working from home. But it's trying to make sure you do stick to those office hours so that you have that work-life balance still, even though you are at home. It's just trying to maintain that, which is really challenging.
Yeah, and I'm noticing what's affecting you, but also what's working for you is the key things. We're all going to be different. So, so, just keep an eye and sort of keeping track of what works well, where things are affecting you or where things need to be sort of changed a little bit. Yeah.
It's also, I just wanted to take a few minutes just to, firstly, I don't think I can't see any more chat coming through or hands up. So firstly, thank you so much, Anna, for, Jim has something to share. Jim?
Yeah, I think a lot of these changes are going to stick, really. We're getting used to the Zoom environment. I've worked from home for 20 years, but I used to visit a lot of clients, but now I do it on Zoom, and everybody's comfortable with that, and that's probably a lot of that's going to stay. So it's changing a lot of our working practice by what's happened, but a lot of it's going to stay around, I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think organisations before where they didn't have remote working and doing Zoom webinars and stuff like that, they're going to see the benefit of it, and there are some positive things that are going to stick going forwards. Jim, yeah, absolutely right.
Yeah, my daughter's she's come to work from home. She's found the environment very difficult, and it's the change. The environment's probably the big thing, and not having the people around you can talk to, and she's certainly found it quite difficult.
Yeah, I think sort of like the isolation, the loneliness is so important. I think we sort of, until you're not in the situation, we don't quite realise how important that's the banter and the office in jokes and social stuff. It's really motivating. It can really boost people. Yeah.
Digital is definitely going to play a bigger part, should I say, for every single business and the way we interact. But equally, there's still lots of value in that face-to-face communication and interaction, and it will be having a balance to when we can return to normal. What that will look like, we don't know. So it could be that digital plays an important role for several months, for whether that's 2, 3 or 6 months or even longer, and then people will adapt digital in between their normal way of working and interaction and business meetings. So it could be, for a time being, it could be less business meetings and using Zoom a lot more instead of going out. So it will change the face of the way we do things, and there will be slowly there will be a balance, but digital will increase, definitely.
Yeah.
Even from a family point of view, my wife had a birthday a couple of weeks ago, and we shared drinks with our relatives in the Lake District and in 2 parts of America, which we'd have never done before. Never done.
Yeah. I think if we sort of, we have to look for it, I think, a little bit more, but there are some positives to be found. And that actually ties in with something, one of the comments here actually is adding some humour into the day. And I think that is absolutely vital. So we don't need to be on professional duty all the time, Zooming friends and family as much as we can. And I also like this one from Conrad that says having small goals and tasks to add purpose. I think having that sense of achievement can be really helpful. Some days if you work at home, you think, actually, what have I done today? What have I sort of ticked off my list and stuff like that. So if you've achieved something, can be very motivating.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Good. I've enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay.
Has anyone else got any other questions or anything? No, thank you so much, Anna. It's been really insightful. Lots of amazing tips there. I just wanted to share a couple of updates before we do all sign off. It's important that we do keep active. We do keep on communicating with each other. We have just launched some online training sessions. So on our website, these are all on our website now. This is a great way to make sure your teams are still being developed, their skills are being developed, whether they're furloughed or not. So please do have a look at them. There's some on international trade, assertiveness, as well as resilience. So it'd be great if you can book yourselves onto those training courses, and they're all starting from May. And do keep an eye on our webinars, because we do have more webinars over the next few weeks. So we'll be making these live shortly. But please join me in thanking Anna again. And Anna, if you're okay, are you happy for me to share the slides with everybody?
Yes, yeah, absolutely fine. Yeah. And my email is there, so if people want some of the top tips, sort of, PDFs to send on to them as well, then please get in touch. Yeah,
that's wonderful. And we'll also share the recording. We'll put that on our YouTube and on social media as well.
Excellent.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.